Hello and welcome to Let's Talk, the podcast for human skills and mindset. First of all, I would like to thank everyone for pouring so much love to this channel. We are just 4 months old, or I would say 4 months young. So if you're really liking the content, you're liking the guest, which we invite here, please like and subscribe. So there are two boys, I would say, Jack and Max. They are coming from a religious service, and Jack asked Max, would it be all right to smoke while praying? Max replied, why don't you ask the priest? So Jack goes to the priest and asks, priest, may I smoke while I pray? But the priest says, no, my son, you may not. That utter disrespect to our religion. Jack goes back to his friend and tells him that what exactly the good priest told him. Max says, I'm not surprised. You ask a wrong question. Let me try. So Max goes back to the priest and asks, priest, may I pray while I smoke? To which the priest eagerly replies, by all means, my son, by all means. So the moral of this short story is the communication. What are the things, how we communicate, how we ask questions. And communication, public speaking, and all these kind of things are some of the things which we are going to discuss in today's podcast. So today I am in conversation with Brenden Kumurasamy, who is an expert in public speaking. He coaches different executives throughout the world. Brenden, welcome to the show.
So Rob, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Cool. So for the people who may not know about you, who is Brenden?
Absolutely, man. I mean, that's a good way of starting this. I mean, I guess Brenden is different things. He's a son to an amazing mother and a brother to an amazing sister. He's someone who wants to create an impact in the world. And I guess for the purpose in this conversation, he's also someone who has a YouTube channel, which I make videos on public speaking communication, because I felt, especially in India, not a lot of people have access to these types of resources and tools. So I started making videos a few years ago to help people with that. And I also coach people.
That's great. So I saw a few of your videos about the public speaking, communication, how exactly people should be presenting themselves in terms of in a corporate environment, maybe talking to their friends, talking to the strangers. So when we discuss about communication, people have different interpretation, and they think it lightly. Yeah, I know what communication is all about. What's your unique perspective about communication?
Beautiful questions, Ram. Here's the way I think about communication. Communication is not just about delivering a presentation at work or going through the motions. It's every moment of our life. It's the way that we talk to our family. It's the way that we order food at a restaurant. It's the way that we meet strangers when we travel. And when we realize that communication helps us lead a more fulfilling life, we start to take it more seriously, because it affects every little inch of how we live, how we engage, and how we are with the world. And Warren Buffett says that the best investment he ever made in himself is in communication. And the reason is simply this, because it's an accelerant of dreams, Surab. If we have a goal in our life, whether it's to be a world-class podcaster, world-class executive, a world changer, the best mom in the world, communication helps us amplify those goals. Because if we're able to master this complicated art, which I don't think is as complicated as people think it is, and we invest the time to get there, it'll be a lot easier for us to lead a more fulfilling life.
That's great. And to add that, it's pretty ironical at the same time when you think deeply that when a child is born and when he or she grows up, the first thing is communication. They start speaking, or they try to communicate in different body languages. And still, communication is something which is so hard to understand sometimes. Uh, so let's try to understand a bit more about yourself at this point. How do you get started? Is it something, a kind of epiphany you got that, okay, this is something I'm going to do it? Or is it something your friends or relative mentioned that you have this wonderful talent wherein you can help people to educate how to have good public speaking, communication, and all those human skills, which most of the time people struggle with?
For sure, Saurabh. So for me, the story started in college and university. I went to business school and I did these things called case competitions. Think of it like hackathons in the tech world, but for business. So while other guys my age were playing rugby or baseball or basketball when they were in college, I wasn't that kind of guy. I did presentations competitively. And that's how I learned how to speak. But the goal was never to be a coach or to be a YouTuber or any of that stuff. I mean, since we're both from South Asian backgrounds, my goal was to be you, Saurabh. Work at a Microsoft, work at an IBM, work at a big tech company, and just be successful. That was the goal. And that's what I did. I worked at IBM for many years. But I had the idea for MasterTalk because I realized that as I was growing up and I was coaching a lot of these students in college, that everything I was teaching them wasn't available for free on the internet. So I started making videos for fun in my mom's basement while I was working at IBM. And then as the years went on, I started to realize that a lot of executives needed help with their coaching. So I started to get a lot of clients in our community primarily, and I was able to exit the corporate world. But I would say my mission now is to help every human being on earth become an exceptional communicator. I think the next Elon Musk is a 7-year-old girl who can't afford a coach. So for me, that's really the dream that I'm working towards.
That's wonderful. So as you mentioned that you started at your mom's basement and you were working in IBM as well. So are you still working in IBM or you just are now 100% towards this endeavor?
You got it. So I quit my job probably a year and a half ago, but much like any other Desi, I took very little risk. So what happened was I probably started coaching when I was 19, so I'm 26 now, so it's been 7 years that I've been doing this. But I only started doing it full time for probably a year and a half. So what happened was a year into MasterTalk, I realized that my channel had legs, and for some reason people were watching these videos. And I said, oh, I should probably take this more seriously. So every hour outside of work, I would invest in making this a reality. I hired the right people who helped me scale the business, and I was able to put in the right processes so that at the end, probably like June or July of 2021, I had actually replaced all of my income that I was working under. So when I had achieved that goal, I was able to safely quit corporate and do this full time. But yeah, it's been a while now.
I love your journey. I mean, you're 26. If I compare to myself at 26, I was still wondering, what am I doing at this point? So I applaud to your clarity towards the goal. And now you're saying that you're in a financially free in terms of and kind of going through and following your passion at this point. And so let's discuss a bit more about getting deep dive into the communication, specifically around public speaking. Now, there are a lot of people who are pretty comfortable from childhood speaking in front of the crowd. And majority of the people, due to various reasons, like first imposter syndrome, or they get nervous, they get cold feet, they are very confident, but as soon as they're in front of the stage, they were like, oh, okay. So they're sweating and butterflies in their stomach and all, which is very common. So what's your, I assume that these are very common questions you get in. So what exactly some of the steps you mentioned to make a person at ease when they start talking? Because sometimes people get warmed up and then they are all good. In all my podcasts, I always make a lot of errors at the start. And then when I get warmed up at this point, because I'm not a professional at this time, I'll be like, okay, now I'm comfortable. So what's your take on that?
Absolutely, Saurabh. So let's start at the beginning, which I think you mentioned super well. What's the root cause? Why is it that most of us are scared of communication? And this is a question I've pondered over years, and I do have an answer. So let's start there, because that'll help us understand everything else. Simple question. Where do we learn how to speak? Where do we give our first presentations in our life? The answer is almost always the same. School. Elementary school, high school, whether you grew up in an Indian education system, whether you're in the US, it doesn't really matter. That's where you learn how to speak. But here's the problem, Saurabh. All of those presentations, all of them, have three things in common. Number one, all of those presentations are mandatory. You don't wake up one morning and say, hey, Saurabh, you want to get breakfast and present all day? Nobody says that. So that's problem number one. Everything's mandatory. Number two, every presentation, you never get to pick the topic. So it's never, Saurabh, what are you passionate about? Are you passionate about empathy and human beings and tech and podcasting? How about you do a presentation around that? That's how the education system works. It's, by the way, Saurabh, I need you to give a presentation on Shakespearean poetry. And then when you're done, I need you to give a presentation on the history of the past prime ministers of India. And you're just like, okay, I guess I have to do this. Right. But here's the problem, Saurabh. Number three. You think I'm done yet? I'm not even done yet. The third problem is all of those presentations are punishable. So if you don't do well, you don't get a pat on the back. Oh, you keep going, keep coding, Saurabh. You'll do great. No, you get a slap in the face and you lose 25% of your grade. So if all of your presentations are mandatory, they're always different. You're always presenting to an audience you don't even like, that doesn't want to be there, and you get punished every time you make a mistake. What's the conclusion? The conclusion is that we grow up believing that communication is a chore, and nobody wants to get better at doing the dishes.
That's so true. I love that fact that when you mentioned that communication is a chore. And one of the things which I really love you mentioned about is that the grading system, or if you do not do well, people punish you. And when punish may be a hard word. Maybe they try to be very critical in a way that you may be demoralized as well. And the schooling system, I don't know about all the other different countries, but I was in India's schooling system, and I know that, yeah, it was at that time pretty intimidating if you are not getting the grades as per the expectations of your parents, as per the expectations of the society and all. So that being said, when we talk about the communication, I think one of the core thing is about a fear of being punished, or fear of having a bad grade and not fit into a particular section of the society where the communication, there are people maybe having a very good communication out there. So that being said, that is one of the inherent, or that is one of the, I would say, symptoms which basically yield in some of the challenges in the communication. So now let's get to the next point. So we have identified what are the key reasons why we have these communication challenges or public speaking challenges. What's next?
Absolutely. That's the right question, by the way, sir. What's next? So before we even talk about the tactics, and trust me, I got a lot of them to share, and we got a long podcast here, so I'm sure there's a lot of tactics, so we'll have time to touch them. What's the remedy? The remedy is so simple that nobody does it, Saurabh. Dream. Why is that? We dream about our vacations. We dream about the expensive things we want to buy, the watches we want to get, the family vacations that we want to go on, the restaurants that we want to visit. And we have goals around these objectives, our next career jump, our next business, our next sale. When was the last time we dreamed about our communication skills? And the answer is never. Nobody who's listening to this podcast right now has ever even thought of doing that. So here's a question that no one's really ever asked. How would your life change if you were an exceptional communicator? Forget about the negativity. Forget about the stress. Forget about the anxiety for a second. How would your life change? A lot of people think that question is cute. They'll listen to this conversation. They'll go, oh, yeah, that's a nice question, Brenden, Saurabh, great. But what very small people are going to do, very few, they're going to take that question and they're going to sit down for 15 minutes, not 15 hours, 15 minutes, and go, how would my life change? And that's when we break, which is the biggest challenge of communication, which I would argue is not fear, because that's controversial. I would say the biggest challenge of communication is motivation, Saurabh. Because if you're not motivated to do something, it doesn't matter how fearful you are. Because if you don't have a reason to do it, you won't punch through it. In the same way, you might have said, in the same way I said, when we started posting content on social media, we had a lot of fear, a lot of insecurity. I had a ton. So why did I push through it? Because I was motivated to do it. So I would start there. That's the next step, and then we can get into the tactics.
Perfect. Yeah. So the motivation, as you mentioned, that is very important if you are really believing in yourself. And at the same time, I think I would be very curious to learn from your experience, which is my experience as well, that when you start these things, for example, a podcast, there will be a lot of negative emotions from other folks as well. Obviously, some people are pretty encouraging. Yeah, please go ahead. The other would be like, are you sure? Everyone is just creating these podcasts. There's one more. It's a needle in a haystack. I mean, you just have to think about it and you have to be consistent. So all these negativity around as well. Have you got these feelings as well when you started your channel?
I mean, absolutely, Saurabh. Let me paint the picture for you. I was a 22-year-old kid in my mother's basement. I have a bachelor's degree in accounting, not communication. My nearest competitor, who's my colleague now on YouTube, he has a PhD in comms. He's double my age. Right? I have very little experience. So why in the world did I press record? And I was broke and I had no money. So why did I do it? I didn't do it for my executives. Obviously, my executives pay my bills now, and I love them to death. But that's not why I started MasterTalk. I started MasterTalk for the 15-year-old girl who can't afford me. Because I just thought about it, Saurabh. Is that 15-year-old girl going to relate to the 60-year-old man? No. Doesn't matter how smart that 60-year-old guy is. They won't relate to that person. They'll only relate to me. But here's the problem, Saurabh. I'm the only one at the time when I was 22, I was the only one who had communication experience in the early 20s. So it's either I make the videos or nobody does. That's the alternative. So what does that mean for me? And what does that mean to your question? It means the following. Hate will always come for all of us who create content. Not because people are bad, but because you cannot build something that everybody loves. It's impossible. Like someone who's a world-class speaker doesn't have time to watch my content, doesn't care because they're already amazing. So what's the message here, Saurabh? The message is, and it's a dark question, but it gets the result. The question is, who suffers from your inability to take action every day? Who suffers from your inability to take action every day? Get really crystal clear about who your platform is for and who it isn't for. And when you're clear about that, you know who to value the opinion of versus not. Because if the person who's giving you negative feedback isn't the person you're trying to reach, that person's feedback is irrelevant. So just focus on the people you want to serve and make the product better for them.
Perfectly said. So let's move on to the next part of the speaking. So we talk about some of the symptoms. We talk about what are the different remedies. Now let's talk about some of the process. And again, maybe in summarized version, I know you have a lot of content, and definitely I'll encourage all the people out here to visit MasterTalk and have all these communication skills, tips, and tricks in detail. But just to give a teaser to the people out here, what do you suggest? What are the different steps they should take on a very high level?
Absolutely, Saurabh. And I'm happy to share on the podcast because there's so much content on the YouTube channel at this point. So let's simplify this. Public speaking is like juggling 18 balls at the same time, Sarah. One of those balls is smiling. One of those balls is eye contact. One of those balls is having the right haircut. Another one is storytelling. Another is nonverbal communication. It can get really complicated. So what's the advice? The advice is one ball at a time. The reason why you improve, Saurav, over 4 months, I'm sure your episode 1 isn't as good as now, and I'm sure in a year you'll be a lot better, because that's what happened to me.
Yeah.
I was terrible because my old videos are still up there. And why are you getting better, though? You're getting better because you're doing the same thing. It's always a podcast. It's always an interview. You're always interviewing somebody inspiring. Hopefully, I'm one of those inspiring people. But you're interviewing people, and you're doing it over and over again. So when you get to interview 100, you're going to be a lot better because the process is the same. You're juggling one ball at a time. So now, Saurav, the question becomes, what are the 3 easiest balls that I recommend people juggle first? What are the 3 easiest exercises that you can do without ever hiring anybody that will get you immediate results? So let's start with that. The first exercise is called the random word exercise. So the random word exercise is super simple, Saurav. Pick a random word, like tissue box, like phone, like headset, like wall, like orange, and create random presentations out of thin air with no preparation. And what I always tell people is if you could make sense out of nonsense, you could make sense out of anything. And that's the magic of the random word exercise. And the best way to practice this, Saurav, and I'll throw it back to you.
Before you go, before you just go further, I just love the sentence about if you make sense of nonsense. Can you just repeat that again?
Of course, happy to. If you can make sense out of nonsense, you can make sense out of anything. And the best way to hold yourself accountable to this is simple. Make your family your own accountability system. So what I force people that I work with to do is because they're super busy. So what I have them do is when they're in a car with their kids or their nieces and their nephew, instead of playing music, they stop the stereo and they just do the random word exercise with each other. And what you'll find fascinating about kids, it can be any age. It's worked as young as 4 from my experience, and as old as any age. They're actually a lot better than we are at it because they don't overthink it. They don't ask for the formula. They don't ask for the process. They just go, orange, okay, and they just do it. And that's the magic. So that's exercise number 1.
Perfect. So that is the first exercise is just like choose any one random word and then try to create a monologue maybe around it. Just talk something about it so that it will help you to make your brain more fluidic in terms of your thought process and try to make some sense out of perceived nonsense, what you mentioned. Cool. So what is the other one? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. So there's 2 other ones. So the second one is what I call question drills. So question drills are really simple. We get asked questions all the time in our life. On a podcast, from our family, at work, you're always getting asked questions. But most of us are reactive. We wait for the question to come, and then we go, oh, yeah, here's the answer. I'll give you an example. When I started podcasting, probably almost 3 years ago at this point, somebody asked me a funny question. He said, where does the fear of communication come from? And I didn't know the answer. I just went, I don't know, man. San Diego? Los Angeles? You tell me, man. Like, I don't know. So because I wasn't prepared, I'd never thought about the question. I gave a crappy answer. So what if we were more proactive? So what I did is every day for 5 minutes. That's it, right? The random word exercise takes 1 minute. Question drill takes 5 minutes. That's it. 5 minutes a day. I answered one question that I thought the world would ask me. So the first day was, where does the fear of communication come from? Question 2, day 2 was, how do you communicate better as an introvert? Day 3 was, on and on and on. But if you do that for 5 minutes every day for a year, Saurav, you'll have answered 365 questions about your industry, about your expertise. You'll be unbeatable because nobody does that in their industry.
That's so powerful. Thinking about one question And when you compound this, then you have 300, 400, or whatever. It depends on how long you go. And then the power of repetition, which you mentioned before, that once you repeat those things, that will become so habitual. Then, I mean, for example, the podcast, the episode first would be a different one versus the episode 100, where maybe you can getting into in a habitual mode. So that's great. So what is the third one?
Absolutely. So obviously there's many, but these are the three that I feel are easy to implement. You don't need an accountability partner. You can just do this on your own. The third one, Saurabh, is so simple that nobody does it. Make a list of 5 people, just 5 people that you really care about in your life. Could be your mom, could be your brother, could be a client, it could be a work colleague at your company, anybody. Make a list of 5 people and ask yourself a simple question. When was the last time I sent these people? These are people we care about, people we know. These are not strangers. When was the last time we sent them a 20-second, not 20-minute, 20-second video message telling them how much we appreciate them in our life? And the answer for most of us listening to this podcast, 0. It's 0. It's never happened. Most people don't think about it. I encourage you to be the person who does. I think they're much better than handwritten cards, and they're easier to do. Because the handwritten card, you got to sit down, you got to write it. It's going to take you like 15 minutes. Then you got to send it to the post office. You got to figure out where to get stamps. Video message, 30 seconds. Those 5 people, you'll be done in like 5 minutes. And that's really the point. And that's the best way to practice a video. Forget about social media. I'm not going to tell anyone to post on social media today, sir. I'm going to start with, let's see communication as a tool for what it is. A tool for impact. A tool to impact people's lives. I had one of my CEOs one day, this is like 6 months ago, send this to 40 of his employees, all 40 of them. And he didn't want to do it. Not because he hated the employees, but because he hated how he looked on camera. He was like, oh my God, like my lighting is off, Brenden. I said, you're going to sit down, you're going to send 40 videos. He sent all 40, nothing crazy, Saurabh. Happy holiday. I love what you do. Love what you're doing at the company, Saurabh. You're working so hard. Like, simple. Next day, he woke up to amazing messages. Oh my God, I've never been sent video messages before. This is crazy. This is amazing. Make that impact. You don't need to be an influencer to make an impact. You just need to take out your camera, take out your phone, and take 30 seconds.
That's so beautiful and powerful. Because if you write an email, just think, I mean, from the human psychology side of the house, you have so many emails in your inbox. And when you try to look into them, specifically coming from executives, sometimes from the people from the IC level, the individual contributor side of the house, or they are pretty much in the into the depth of their technology, for example, they would be like, yeah, okay, I mean, executive must have mentioned something, and they maybe scribble through, and then, okay, that's not an impact. But if you add it as a part of the video, the visual representation also gives a pretty powerful impact. So that's great. So you mentioned about the visual. And what are the first 2? Actually, I just forgot to write that down. Just want to make sure that we can recap for the viewers here.
Of course, happy to.
Yeah.
So the first one is the random word exercise. Pick a random word every day, or 5 random words every day. Create random presentations without any prep. Number 2 is question drills. Spend 5 minutes every day reflecting on one question and answering one question that you think the world will ask you, and just do that every day for a year. And the third one, just send video messages to the people that you love. And obviously, if you do it with 5, do it with 50, do it with 75, do it with 100 people, and watch the world change in front of you.
And I think these things also have some cascading effect in a different part of your life. So, for example, if, as we are discussing about having a strong public speaking or communication skills, that will lead maybe to a position in the corporate world, on in your any aspects of your life you desire, that can lead to maybe some other things out there. So it's always like a couple of moves like these will help you to realize your dreams or the things that you're looking forward to. So that being said, regarding the communication, they are nonverbal and verbal. You mentioned about that you have to juggle through many balls while you are presenting about your verbal and non-verbal cues, the way how you present, the way how you dress, the way how you make an eye contact to maybe thousands of people in front of you, or maybe just looking at the dark place, because it depends on the lighting, what you have. So in terms of those things, what do you recommend? Like when you have so many things out there, and you mentioned that there are three important things, but as far as the nonverbal communication or cues, what's your perspective around that?
Absolutely, Saurabh. And I love that you said, like, because we have three things, there's a lot of things to juggle. So before I answer the nonverbal question, which I'm happy to, here's the answer to the question you're asking me indirectly. Here's the most important thing. Most people who are listening to this podcast are making a big mistake right now, Saurabh. And let me tell you what the mistake is. They're making notes about these exercises. They're going, wow, this is so awesome. Saurabh brought on such a great guest today. He's talking about the random word exercise, sending video messages to my family and the people that I love, and doing these questions. This is brilliant. But you know what the problem is? The problem is they don't do it. That's the problem. They wait for the next thing to take a note on. They're waiting in anticipation right now. What is Brenden going to say around nonverbal cues? So before I say those, let me tell you who's winning this episode right now, which is probably 1% of people listening, so is that they've already booked 15 minutes in their calendar every day, not just tomorrow, every day, to do all three of those exercises. If you just do that, you can stop listening to this episode, because I got what I needed from this episode, which is simply this. Are you actually practicing? Because the best way to speak is not to listen to me or Saurabh. It's for you to speak. It's for you to wake up the next morning and go, you know what? I'm pretty scared to send a video to my mom, but I'm going to send a video. You know, I'm really worried about this random word exercise, so I'm just going to do it. And that's really the point. Okay, so do it. So that's the PSA. So now let's get into the question. Nonverbal communication. All we need to know about nonverbal, Saurabh, is the face. That's the most important part that people should focus on for today. The biggest mistake I see with nonverbal is smiling. So whenever we're listening to somebody, our face is usually not that excited, like the example here with my face. So you always want to smile a little bit. You don't need to show your teeth like this. You don't need to get crazy, but just little smile. Cool. That's what I would say for nonverbal.
Smiling is from the perspective of the face. What about the hand movements and other gestures, maybe while standing, or maybe when you are sitting on the chair?
Yeah, I'd say funny enough, Saurabh, as you can tell, obviously people who are listening to the audio can't see it. I haven't moved my arms even once, really, very little, since we started. Sometimes I do this, but most of the time it doesn't really. So I would say smiling is 80% of it. And the other 10, 20% is just not making mistakes with body language. There's a lot of different nuances, like moving your hand when you say a point and all that stuff. But I think for most people, that's useless if they haven't done the random word exercise 100 times, which I think is the priority. But what I would say with body language is, generally speaking, you just want to make sure that you're not moving too much. That's all. So try not to walk around unless you're an expert already. So just stay in one place, keep your arms to the side, and move it from time to time, and you'll be okay.
Perfect.
So I wouldn't worry too much.
I think these are enough to get started. As you mentioned, that even if most of the time, again, humans have a tendency to get some recipe, whether it should be in terms of eating something or in terms of the success in your life. And they try to see that, okay, person X has done X, Y, and Z. I'll do exactly the same and I'll be successful. Now, that may be one of the things which you can try to get some encouragement or get some direction, but every human being has their own direction. So they have to, because every human being has a unique skills. That being said, let's move over towards the last segment of the show here. It's about the famous personalities and storytelling. So I have seen your videos. sometimes you pick some famous personalities like maybe Elon Musk or Simon Sinek and Jim Rohn, Tony Robbins and all. And then you start and give some kind of example, and then you get to the point of which is the crux of the core of that particular episode. What's your perspective about storytelling? People have story are really something people look for. What's your perspective about why storytelling is so much important in communication?
Absolutely, Saurabh. Storytelling is super important to your point. It allows us to develop ourselves. It allows us to remember things. Because as we always say, data never gets remembered. Only stories get remembered. That's why stories sell and facts tell. That's kind of the famous quote around storytelling. But here's what I'll also say, which I think is the piece that a lot of coaches in my industry don't talk enough about. Storytelling is not for beginners. If you're sitting there and you're going, you haven't dreamed about your communication. I know I'm repeating this a lot, but the repetition is the mother of invention, right? People who haven't done the dreaming, done the random word exercise. Storytelling is not for you. This is really advanced, and I'll tell you why. The reason is because if you tell the best story in the world and you sound like this the entire time as you're telling the story sucks. Doesn't matter how well it's written. It's not going to land. You need to get the delivery right. Imagine if I showed up on this podcast and I was monotone the entire time as I was speaking right now to you. I wouldn't sound like someone you want to listen to. So delivery is 90% of the game. So with that said, I'm happy to still answer the question, obviously. So for my people who have already booked the time to work on themselves, what does it mean for storytelling? All we need to know is Les Brown's quote. Never make a point without telling a story, and never tell a story without making a point. So I'll repeat that again. Never make a point without telling a story, and never tell a story without making a point. It's a little bit complicated, so let me digest this a little bit more for us. What does Les Brown mean? Basically, what he means in layman terms is every story should have an outcome, and the outcome should be more important than the story. So if you just tell a story for the sake of storytelling, it doesn't go anywhere. People get lost in the forest. So you need to start with the lesson. What is the lesson that I want to teach my audience first? And then I select the story in my life that corresponds to the result that I want to deliver. Let me give you an example. What is the main outcome of any podcast appearance I do? Number one. It's only one. Convince my audience that communication is possible. That they can do it. Because if they're convinced, Saurabh, that they can do it, they'll watch all the videos. They'll get the help that they need. They'll work with their family. They'll do the video messages. But if I don't convince you that you can be an exceptional communicator, then it won't work. So now the follow-up question becomes, well, Brenden, what's the story that I need to tell? And I've tried so many stories, hundreds of them, but there's one story that always works. And I'll tell you the story right now. The reason I'm so confident everyone in the world can be an exceptional communicator, Saurabh, is because I sucked at communication. My whole life, I struggled with it. I grew up in a city called Montreal in Canada. And for those who don't know, Montreal is a city where you need to know how to speak French. Except I didn't know French. So my whole life, not only did I struggle with communication, I had to present in a language I didn't even know. So when I was 8 years old, I look at the crowd and go, bonjour. And that was my life as a kid. That's one. Two, right? Second one, I have a crooked left arm because I had a surgery when I was 2 years old, and it's still crooked, which means when I was younger, not only did I not know how to interact with people because I didn't know the language, I had a big cast. So I'd walk around like this. Nobody wants to be friends with the guy they don't understand and who has a cast on. And challenge number 3, you would think that a communication expert studied communication. I have a bachelor's degree in accounting. What am I doing in communication?
That's great. Actually, it's so inspiring, as you mentioned towards last, some of your struggles in your life. And it seems that we are just getting started. But obviously, we will spare some of our discussions for maybe the next time when we have just to explain a bit more about your struggles and all. Because the way what we are interacting so far, it seems that you are born with these communication skills. But now, as you mentioned, that you struggle as well, which means that you have your own life experience about what are the struggles. And these are some of the things which really help to flourish as a human being, because now you have your own personal story. You're not listening to the story of those great men and women in the history, which they have done so much for the world and for a community. So that being said, Brenden, thank you so much for coming on this show and giving such wonderful advice on public speaking and communication. And last but not the least, if people would like to reach out to you, what are the mediums, platforms, or any last word from your side?
Absolutely, sir. It was so great to be on, by the way. Thanks so much for having me. This is great. So 2 ways to keep in touch. The first one is definitely the YouTube channel. Just go to MasterTalk in one word. You'll have access to hundreds of free videos on how to communicate ideas effectively. And the second way to keep in touch is most definitely my free trainings. So I do a free training on communication every 3 weeks, and it's over Zoom. It's live, it's interactive, it's fun. It's not a boring webinar. I facilitate it myself. And if you want to join that, all you have to do is go to rockstarcommunicator.com. That's the website. Brenden, thanks again. And I wish you all the best for your future endeavors.